Imagine waking up, grabbing your phone to take a private photo or send a message to a loved one, and realizing that a government-mandated algorithm is silently reviewing that image before it even leaves your device. It sounds like a plot from a dystopian sci-fi movie, but this is the exact reality currently being debated in the United Kingdom. Welcome back to CyberInsider, your ultimate source for everything happening in the digital world, from cybersecurity breakthroughs to the political battles shaping our online freedom. Today, we're diving deep into a massive controversy that has sent shockwaves through the global tech and privacy communities. The UK government has unveiled a sweeping new proposal aimed at scanning citizens' phones, and the pushback from privacy giants has been immediate and fierce. This story begins at London Tech Week, where Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government dropped a bombshell announcement. The government is demanding that major technology companies build systems capable of blocking children from taking, sharing, or even viewing nude images on their smartphones and tablets. On the surface, the goal sounds entirely honorable and necessary, protecting children from online harms. However, the technical infrastructure required to achieve this has sparked an absolute firestorm. Two of the most respected names in digital privacy, the encrypted messaging platform Signal and the privacy-focused VPN provider Mullvad, have broken their silence to issue an urgent, chilling warning to the public. They argue that this proposal does not just protect kids. Instead, it risks creating an unyielding device-level surveillance system that effectively turns every single smartphone into a government informant. What makes this situation incredibly urgent is how fast the government wants this technology deployed. This is not a distant policy idea for the future. It is a direct ultimatum happening right now. As we unpack this developing story, we'll look at how this technology works, why the government believes it is completely safe, and why privacy advocates believe it represents the end of digital privacy as we know it. The implications of this UK plan stretch far beyond the British borders, setting a dangerous precedent for how governments around the world might control and monitor personal technology. To understand the severity of this situation, we have to look at the incredibly aggressive timeline and strict enforcement mechanisms the UK government is putting on the table. Under the new proposal, major technology firms, most notably tech giants like Apple and Google, have been given a mere 3 months to comply. Within this tight window, these companies must either enable their existing safety features or develop entirely new technical measures to detect and block nude content across devices used or sold within the United Kingdom. The scope of this order is breathtakingly wide. It does not just apply to new phones sitting on store shelves waiting to be bought. It applies retroactively to existing smartphones and tablets already in the hands of millions of UK citizens. The government is not asking nicely either. They have made it perfectly clear that if these tech companies fail to comply voluntarily within the 3-month deadline, the state is prepared to step in and introduce formal legislation to force implementation. To ensure these multi-billion-dollar corporations fall in line, the proposed laws would be backed by massive financial fines. But the government is going even further than financial penalties. In an unprecedented move, the proposal includes a last resort measure that would introduce criminal liability for tech executives. This means that if an executive at a company like Apple or Signal refuses to build these scanning tools because they want to protect user privacy, they could personally face criminal charges and potential jail time in the UK. For adults living in the UK, the government claims life will not change drastically, provided they jump through a few administrative hoops. According to the plan, adults will retain full access to nude or sexually explicit content, but only after completing a mandatory age verification process. Once an adult proves their age, the scanning restrictions are supposed to lift for them. Meanwhile, anyone identified as a child will be strictly prevented from creating, viewing, saving, or sharing any material flagged as explicit. While the government frames this as a neat, clean solution to a complex societal problem, the sheer logistics of verifying the age of every phone user and constantly scanning data has raised immediate red flags about how this will work in practice. With such an aggressive push for device-level scanning, it's important to look closely at the arguments UK government is using to justify these measures. The Home Office and the government officials maintain that these steps are completely necessary to combat the rising tide of online child sexual abuse. financial sextortion, and the early exposure of children to pornography. To support their claims, officials have put forward deeply concerning statistics. Government data shows that a staggering 91% of online child sexual abuse reports recorded in 2024 involved self-generated content, meaning images or videos taken by minors themselves, often under duress or manipulation. Furthermore, official studies indicate that the average child is now exposed to pornography by an incredibly young age of 13. Faced with these statistics, the government argues that traditional methods of policing the internet are no longer enough, and that safeguards must be built directly into the hardware we use every single day. Crucially, the UK government insists that these safety measures can be successfully implemented without compromising the privacy of law-abiding citizens. The Home Office issued a statement emphasizing that tech companies must introduce these protections without threatening privacy or collecting any user data. Their core argument rests on a technical concept known as local on-device analysis. Instead of copying your photos and sending them to a secure government cloud server to be analyzed, the scanning software would live locally on your phone's processor. The phone itself does the scanning, and if nothing illicit is found, the data supposedly stays private and never leaves the device. To prove that this is entirely possible and safe, UK officials pointed to existing technologies that are already out in the wild. They highlighted Apple's current child safety features, which scans for specific content, as well as specialized software developed by Safe2Net, a prominent UK safety technology company. The government views these existing tools as living proof that device-level content detection can successfully protect children, while keeping user data entirely local. This perspective has gained massive backing from a coalition of major child protection and social advocacy organizations. Groups like the Internet Watch Foundation, the NSPCC, Women's Aid, and the Children's Commissioner for England have all come out in strong support of the proposal, arguing that these device-level safeguards are a vital tool that could significantly reduce the creation and circulation of abusive material. Despite the noble intentions stated by the government and child protection groups, privacy advocates are ringing the alarm bells at maximum volume, led by a fierce and uncompromising statement from the encrypted messaging platform Signal. Signal did not hold back in its critique, arguing that children absolutely deserve to be safe, protected, and nurtured, but they do not deserve a society built on surveillance, funding cuts, and political cover-ups. Signal states clearly that children, like every other human being on the planet, have a fundamental right to privacy. The company warned that forcing residents to verify their age or submit their personal device content to an automated scanning system just to communicate is nothing less than a dangerous form of mass surveillance. One of Signal's most terrifying arguments revolves around the concept of scope creep, which is the inevitable expansion of a technology beyond its original purpose. Signal points out that throughout history, mass surveillance and censorship capabilities never remain narrowly focused, no matter how sincere or well-meaning the promises of the politicians who created them might be. Once this invisible surveillance infrastructure is switched on by default on millions of UK devices, the underlying technology is established. Signal warns that future governments could easily expand the criteria of what the system looks for. Today, the system is tuned to scan for nudity to protect children. Tomorrow, a different political administration could decide to alter the code, to scan for political dissent, unauthorized protests, or what the state deems to be harmful content or threats. Furthermore, Signal completely dismissed the government's reassurance that on-device scanning protects privacy. They stated that promises of local scanning are cold comfort because the core risk remains the same. Once the scanning tool controls the device's built-in camera and file system, its boundaries will be defined entirely by the whims and laws of the government. Signal also revealed that law enforcement agencies have already been asking for widely scoped powers like this, which are incredibly ripe for exploitation in an unstable political environment. Instead of building a dystopian surveillance state, Signal argues that true child safety looks like well-funded public education, robust social services, and meaningful guardrails placed on very artificial intelligence technologies and big platforms that the current government is actively courting. Joining Signal in this defensive front is Mullvad, a highly respected privacy-focused VPN provider that took to social media to deliver an equally scathing verdict on the UK proposal. Mullvad did not mince words, directly characterizing the government's plan as a mandate to install government spyware on every single mobile device in the country. To back up this serious accusation, Mullvad explained the harsh technical reality of how an operating system functions. They argued that any software capable of continuously monitoring content across every single application and blocking that material in real time would inherently require deep, unrestricted access to the core architecture of the device and its operating system. According to Mullvad, implementing this level of continuous real-time control would force tech companies to introduce severe device lockdown measures. In order to ensure that users cannot bypass the scanning software, manufacturers would have to restrict the freedom of the device owners. Users would likely lose the ability to disable the monitoring software, modify their security settings, or install alternative open-source operating systems that value privacy. This effectively strips individuals of ownership over their own property, turning personal smartphones into locked-down terminals managed by corporate and state guidelines. Mullvad also raised a deeply troubling point regarding corporate monopoly and state power. They pointed out that this proposal highlights a growing, dangerous cooperation between governments and the dominant mobile platform providers, specifically Google and Apple. By forcing these tech giants to deploy state-mandated scanning tools, the government is actually strengthening big tech's monopoly and absolute control over our most personal information. This creates a centralized chokehold on human communication, where a tiny handful of corporations and government agencies hold the keys to what can be seen, said, or shared on a digital device. As we bring all these pieces together, it becomes clear that the UK is turning into a critical battleground for the future of global digital rights. The debate highlights a profound, irreconcilable friction between two vital societal values: the urgent need to protect vulnerable children from horrific online abuse, and the fundamental human right to private, unmonitored communication. While the UK government and major child protection charities view device-level scanning as a modern, innovative solution to a modern crisis, privacy champions like Signal and Mullvad see it as a Trojan horse that will permanently break the concept of personal privacy. The technical warnings raised by these companies remind us that once encryption and device security are compromised for one specific purpose, they are compromised for everything. There's no such thing as a backdoor or a scanning system that only allows the good guys in, or only looks for bad things. Once the tool exists, it becomes a target for hackers, foreign intelligence agencies, and authoritarian regimes who want to exploit it. If the UK successfully forces Apple and Google to deploy this spyware under the threat of fines and criminal charges, the other nations around the world will undoubtedly follow their lead, creating a domino effect that could end the era of secure personal technology. We will continue to follow this developing story closely as the 3-month deadline approaches and tech companies decide whether to comply, fight back in court, or pull their services from the UK entirely. Thank you for watching this deep dive on CyberInsider. Make sure to keep your devices secure, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.